Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. Today we're discussing the automotive-inspired Oris TT3 Day-Date in titanium. You can see and you can purchase this handsome Day-Date automatic in titanium on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full sales listing for this watch with additional accessories included in the sale, high resolution images for your desktop, and naturally complete pricing details for this Oris TT3 Day-Date. Now, the watch on my wrist represents perhaps the best compromise between horology and automotive content. Auto-inspired without being explicitly co-branded or clumsily styled to look like a part of a car. The watch is sporty, but at the same time it has standalone qualities that make it worthwhile whether you're into motorsports or not. Now, it wears easily on my wrist with one of the most interesting case forms I've encountered in a long time, but let's talk about the basics. Now, across the round of the case from 9 to 3, the watch is most conventional. That is where it measures a 43.5 millimeter span lengthwise down the wrist, and that's quite reasonable, and it's not counting the immense crown, which looks a little bit like a knockoff gas cap on a 50s Le Mans car. Now, you also note that it's a fairly slim watch. For a sports watch at an entry-level price, 12.5 millimeters thick with a generously sloped flank is superb. This will fit underneath the dress cuff as well as a tight sleeve beneath your suit jacket. You can also see the most interesting dimension of the watch. That's where I'm going to tell you that lug-to-lug, it measures 48.9 millimeters, but the actual distance between the pivot points is less than that. So let me show you what that means. It means that this is what Italian collectors of mid-century dress watches would describe as a disco volante case or a flying saucer. It almost comes to a knife-like blade at its periphery at 12 and 6, with the actual pivot points of the bracelet somewhat inboard of the edge of the case. So the actual measurement from pivot to pivot is probably closer to about 47 millimeters, which makes this an easy watch to wear on a narrow wrist, all the more so because you can see the bracelet can simply be pulled straight down with no tendency to flare or fight you. Now, the bracelet is nicely made. Also in titanium, you can see it does swell to match the arc of the case, so aesthetically it's congruent and handsome, but it also plants the watch nicely laterally, being properly wide. It prevents the watch from wanting to torque side to side on the wrist. You can see that the finish is differential with polish and satin finished elements to create contrast, and on the underside you'll also note that it has fairly broad gaps between these flanking links to avoid pinching skin and pulling hair. And I had my questions about the center links, to be honest. After wearing the watch for a little bit to test the theory, I can attest to their comfort. This is a very well designed ergonomic equation for a human wrist. Now, the bracelet features twin trigger release, so no clamshell, no friction fit system, and you also note the thought that goes into the design, with the actuator trigger being remarkably distinct from the finish of the clasp itself, all in high polish. It has a substantial milled swing arm and closes with a satisfying snick. You'll also note that the watch features a somewhat complex case form, not just the polish on the flank, but there's also a distinct top and a bottom to the case as viewed in profile, with the satin finish across the top contrasting nicely with the gloss black of the bezel. Now, the dial itself features muted automotive themes, the radial calibration with full Arabic numerals, designed to recall automotive dashboard instruments without being too cute by half. It works well because aesthetically it's pleasant, but it's also practical. You can easily read the time on this watch. So while it has a little bit of speedometer to it, it's also a very functional timepiece. Now, you'll note that the watch is nicely arrayed on a vertical axis from 12 to 6, which contains 12, 6, as well as the cannon pinion, the hands, the Oris marquee, the day, and the date. Now, the day and the date are quite unobtrusive to the point that their black discs disappear into the dial when you're not looking for them. There are some Day-Date watches, the Day-Date from Rolex being the most notable, where the calendar functions dominate the dial. Here, they're muted, minimized, and nicely stacked so that they're there in a single glance when you want to see them, as opposed to having to move your eye around the dial to locate the complication. It's all there. Now, you also note that the hour and the minute hand are luminescent. There's a small pip of luminova outboard of each numeral, so you can easily see the watch at night. And then a small detail that may be more difficult to see in my light box. I'll get a little bit closer to try to help the cause, and maybe I can do a few things with the aperture. There, I'm blinding you, but you can see the carbon fiber imprint on the center dial. You can also see that it's a British Racing Green matte color about the hour track with applied numerals, and then the center dial is a true carbon with a translucent coating atop, almost like a lacquer. You can also see that they're on a different plane with the center dial being somewhat raised, and since we're doing this, we may as well note that the ray haut is generously sloped and concave, bowl-shaped, nicely bounding the barrier between the bezel proper and the dial itself. Now you can see that the automotive gas cap inspired crown looks good. It's polished on its outer face, and then it's nicely knurled such that it's easy to grip. It's not a screw down, although the watch does have 100-meter water resistance, so it's easy to use this crown. There's no need to screw it out to access the functions. And I may as well talk a little bit about the functions. What you're looking at is a true ETA caliber 2836, so it's not a Sellita, it is a true ETA. It has the double quickset function, so you can quickset both the day and the date. When you pull the crown out, you hack or stop the seconds. So if you are following the 24 Hours of Le Mans, you can synchronize precisely to the official race timer of the 24 Hours of Le Mans using your Oris watch. And again, since we are talking Oris here, I'm sure you'll be rooting for some sort of Audi R8 LMS car. Ultimately, the case back is sufficient for the price of the watch. It's nice to be able to see the movement. It's nice to be able to behold the heartbeat that you can hear with your ear. It is a mineral crystal on the back versus a sapphire on the front, so where all of the brunt of the scratches and scuffs will be taken, you have the hardness of that 9 on the Mohs scale of a sapphire crystal. 38-hour power reserve with bidirectional winding action. One of the nice features of an ETA caliber is that, with the exception of the 7750, they all wind bidirectionally, so they don't have unloaded rotor wobble in one direction or the noises that can accompany that. A remarkably thoughtful case design with a tough movement on the inside, a handsome dial, just enough automotive theme and imagery to please those gearheads out there, but also enough style and character to stand on its own for those who are not automotively inclined. You can see and you can purchase this titanium Oris TT3 Day-Date on our website.